Hello. Welcome to the episode 33 of Take It EV. 33. Alright, before I start, a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, I have to say thank you very much for the feedback that I had for the last couple of episodes. You guys are amazing. Second of all, if this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, please do subscribe. Check out some of the previous episodes. The links are in the description. Check out the Patreon. Go and check out our YouTube channel as well. There's going to be some stuff appearing there as well. And, enjoy. How are you doing today?
Fine. And you?
Not too bad. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
In Finland, in Lahti, in the headquarters.
Oh, okay. Is it very cold down there at this time?
No, only -1. So very warm.
So that's super warm for you guys.
That's a few weeks ago it was -27. So yes, it is.
Oh, wow.
But that was extremely cold for this season.
Whereabouts in Finland are you based?
Quite south. It's only 100 kilometers northeast from Helsinki.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty warm in here as well. I've changed my tires on the car to winter tires recently.
Okay, you're in where?
In Tunbridge in Kent in the UK. That's about 30 miles, which is about 60 kilometers south of London. Today on the episode we have Tomi Risumaki as a guest. He's the CEO of Kempower, who are a charge point manufacturer. Yeah,
my name is Tomi Risumaki, and I'm basically individual who's worked with e-mobility more than 10 years now. More than 2 years here in Kempower, which is we are manufacturer of DC fast chargers.
Okay.
Here and based in Finland, and basically also this week listed in Nasdaq Helsinki First North, so public company. Young one from that perspective, but Kempower was born besides an older company who has worked in the welding industry for the last 70 years. And It's actually the modern fast chargers and welding machines are not that different. So there is a long technology heritage actually with DC power supplies. So that's actually was kind of the new route for something existing already from 1949. So that's basically where we come from.
So I wasn't actually quite expecting the welding to have a lot to do with DC fast charging, but now that you mention it, is welding actually also DC?
It's DC nowadays.
Okay.
Since 1977, when our sister company actually was the first company in the world to go into DC inverter technologies in welding.
Yeah,
that's kind of in a pioneering environment when it comes to safe DC into users' hand to be used. So,
but presumably voltages in welding are not as high as they are in car charging.
Yeah, but the powers are pretty similar. So it's welding is very high amps and low voltage, and then from welding perspective, the charging amps are pretty low. But the voltage is high. So
because in welding you're pretty much shorting the two cables with a little bit of a material in between that you want to melt very quickly.
Yeah, exactly, and control that procedure, and that's the part of the phenomena we want to now avoid. So that's the difference with welding and charging.
Well, at least you're very well aware of what to avoid.
Yeah.
Cool. What did make you guys decide to kind of pivot that way? I'm sure welding is still a good business.
It is still, and that company is a separate company. It's existing there. It's kind of a new way to use something that was developed for another industry. Long time ago, and that's basically a new chance. And we made our first chargers already in 2013. But then basically there's a family company and the owners look at the market. There's not enough EVs around there to actually concentrate on this already that early on. And then the things changed a bit. 2017, the market studies were showing that now could be a good time to actually investigate this further. Yeah. And then basically have our own company for this from 2018.
Okay. Yeah, I've only been aware of Kempower as a charging sort of manufacturer. I think from 2019, I've read somewhere something. It must have been in Finland or Norway, because I don't think you guys were present in the UK at that
First
time.
charger ever was sold actually to UK.
Oh, was it? Okay.
To Dennis Eagle carpet trucks, but that's a longer story. But that was the very first production unit going out from the factory and sold to customer. It was 1 week before finished customer, so the first unit was sold to UK.
Are these chargers actually available to the public in the UK, or are they just for private?
Now the first ones are in a public, but let's say that was only this year that it has been in the public EV charging. We've been more in the commercial vehicle side of businesses and looking at these mobile units, which have been. We have a partner in UK who is renting those to events and shows and things like this. So
that's what are they called?
A Vital EV.
Okay. I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because everyone talks about the charge providers, kind of like Osprey or others in the UK at least. But we rarely kind of hear the story from the sort of the charging point manufacturer point of view, and I assume this is a fairly buoyant and kind of fresh market at the moment. It's very, and must be quite competitive. And with you guys having experience in the in high current delivery already, it must be fairly very good for you to be in that position. But I've only heard sort of good stories about Kempower, and I and obviously you guys have approached the market completely differently. But I want to find out what it's like from the sort of your perspective, like when you deliver a charger to, or when you talk to a charge provider, how does it look like? Like, what do you give them as options, and what how much influence do they have over the options you put in the charger? If that makes sense, because every charger out there is completely different. At the end of the day, they all just provide power, but we all kind of care these days about the user experience, the different, that's the differentiator between the chargers, and also, of course, the reliability, which seems to be a high. It seems to be a hot topic at the moment in the UK, with some networks, having the chargers being brand new 2-3 years ago and now failing. Oops. I think Siri decided to talk to me. Sorry. Yeah. So could you talk about the sort of the process of, how does it look like from your perspective when you have a charger that you want to put on a market, a charging provider contacts you to put, say, 100 of them in, somewhere. What are the choices they have? What is up to them? What's up to you?
We are quite flexible on everything what we have. So it's but of course, when the charge point operators are accustomed to certain behavior, they want to have the same behavior with the other devices as well. When it comes to, let's say, payment methods, charging standards, charging powers, in our world, everything is flexible.
Okay.
So that gives also the difficulty of choice, of course, and we are trying to make some advice, of course, there, because for us, actually, some kind of a powerful charger that's not constant, that's variable. So basically the charging provider can decide pretty much everything when it comes to the Kempower system.
Okay.
And the flexibility is always sometimes difficult, that people are now, that you don't have ready choice. You haven't made that you always have a CHAdeMO and CCS in the same. You can choose whatever you want. And then people might have a difficulty to choose because you don't have the similar kind of limits as kind of these box builder type of chargers which are always similar. So that's good and bad in that way, because now you have the full flexibility, and actually the charge point operators can then fully be deciding on what they want to offer to their customers from that point of view. So that's there. And basically what you ask also about the reliability and the lifetime on the field.
Yes.
For us, it is maybe a easier step when we come from very rough environment from the welding industry, where the heritage comes from. So moving into wet atmosphere or outside And if you have competitors who are coming from clean industrial spaces, and the electronics is basically the whole heritage of the companies is based on something indoors equipment, then a company coming from the tool industry, which is used in Siberia or offshore rigs, and how to protect electronics in there and how to make reliable products for that, I think we have a good strength in that side as well.
Yeah, and where you're based as well, obviously the cold weather, frost and all that,
Yeah.
you're surrounded by that, so you know how bad that can be.
Yes, and especially that people think about Finland only as cold, but it's a country where the temperature changes are quite high.
Yeah.
Because summer can be plus 35 and winter can be minus 35, so that the variance is creating some experience on that.
That's true. Is the because if I had to pick one of the weaknesses of the charging or chargers at the moment, is the fact that they're obviously exposed to all weather all year round, and that I think that shortens their lifespan and their reliability. And some of the manufacturers or some of the sort of charge point operators in the UK started building canopies around the chargers, and not only for the customers obviously to enjoy because it's not fun to trying to plug in your car in the rain or in snow, but I'm sure that kind of works very well with the charging point as well. The unit itself probably doesn't like to be exposed to everything all the time.
And talking about whatever kind of modern display technologies, they don't like to be in direct sunlight 100% of the time and things like this. So, of course, in that way, shadow is good, at least from the heating point of things. And we are not so worried about water and things like this. But then, of course, direct sunlight to screens is always an issue. If you look at any display technologies available at the moment, if you have, let's say, 40 degrees hot sun boiling into the screens, but that's more or less just designing the placement of the chargers. Are they facing north or south, or how do you do it?
Okay.
But and of course that's something that people should take into account, of course, when they're designing the charging fields.
Yeah. So when I look at the Kempower chargers, at least the ones that I've seen myself, the kind of slim units with quite funky looking cable stalks or whatever you'd call it, with a big springs going up, which is obviously designed to kind of allow the user to maneuver the pretty long cable quite easily. What made you guys go with that sort of design? Everybody else seems to just go for a standard, let's have a high tower sort of with all the electronics inside, and cables kind of, at about 2 meters height or 2.5 meters height, and let the user struggle with it, basically. Whereas you guys have designed the chargers completely different, at least from the user perspective.
Yeah, it's most of the guys are EV drivers, so we design products that we like ourselves. And actually, we see also the EVs becoming the new normal in such few years, and you have to fit the chargers somewhere, and the spaces will be tight. So we wanted to, of course, save the footprint, be able to have the chargers in areas where you have normal parking lots, and not to be able to basically reserve a lot of space in everywhere, and then have the actual charging electronics far away. Because and more EV charging points you will have in the same locations, because that's how I see the market going, that you don't have these standalone chargers in the middle of nowhere, that you have more or less concentrated charging places that the users know that you have free spots where to go. And that actually led us thinking that then the design must be slim, that you can fit it to existing parking places and not lose very much expensive area, especially depends on the country where you are. We have a lot of space in Finland, but when you go to a bigger city, in here as well, the space is limited.
Yes.
But we thought about the global. If you go into the many countries, the space is very expensive.
Yeah, especially in urban areas. Yeah. Okay. And it is it's because you, like you said, one of the other things that kind of differentiate you guys, and there are some other providers that do this as well, but you put the electronics, or the sort of the bit that actually steps up the power from the grid to the DC level, presumably, that's in a separate box. That's
the whole charger is there.
Okay, and then the cables that just go to the actual unit.
Yeah.
They're just DC cables and the display.
DC cable, yeah. That's DC cabling all through the system, and basically the charging satellites will have also they have the individual charging controllers.
Okay.
That actually talk with the car and decide the things and communicate with the system. So.
Okay. Going to my previous point about the sort of reliability and exposure to the elements, presumably that helps with that as well. Because unlike some other ABB chargers or I can't remember what the there's a charger type in the UK that's quite they used to be quite prevalent. I can't remember the name of them, but they were on every motorway service station, and people kind of didn't like them. But the whole unit basically contained everything inside, and that's why it was a bit thicker and
That's basically the traditional way, like I said, the standalone box building kind of unit.
And then everything in that box is obviously exposed, and if anything goes wrong, it's also an intimidating piece of equipment.
And in a way, also to update the power, it's only to exchange the unit, and you don't have the possibilities to basically have a kind of system thinking where you can change the feeding power and expand the field, and that's kind of part of the idea as well, what we had in the beginning, that the EVs are getting more and more popular. The system have to grow without the needing to change every piece of equipment in the field. And like it goes with these box chargers, that you either have similar more and more, which means that you invest the same every time, or basically you want to increase the power, then you tear down the old one and replace it with the new one.
Yeah, so you want to have upgradability basically, and kind of
that's the idea, that the system can grow when the EVs get more popular. So
and what I like about what you said is the you guys are EV owners and users yourselves, because quite often when I see I've been driving EVs since 2015, so quite long before they became a bit more mainstream a thing now, which I think they are nowadays. People kind of feel like EVs are the future, whereas in 2015 it was a bit of a, what a weird thing.
So 2015, was it a Leaf or Tesla?
It was a Leaf for me.
That's the first ones in many places.
Yeah. I mean, it was the sort of the affordable, choice back then, and I lived in London, where basically I could no longer see myself driving a diesel car. Not to mention the fact that on short journeys, petrol diesel cars actually break down more often if you drive them short distances.
And how I see it as well, that if you choose an EV, you cannot go back anymore. That's impossible.
No, it's impossible.
So we have 2 EVs at home as well, and even the lawnmower is electric now. So it's
But where I was going is I quite often back then, when I would drive EV to plug into the public charger, I often had this feeling that the person who's designed this charger, or the people who have worked on it, never owned an EV themselves, because everything was designed to be kind of counterintuitive. Whereas if anyone gets to use one of your chargers, the screen is big, the cable's very easy to navigate. It's all kind of at least I can talk from the sort of the perspective of the Osprey chargers in the UK, that are just completely different, basically, as an experience, I have to say. One of the other things that kind of blows me away is the fact that I can not only see the charging status on the screen, but there's a QR code on the screen, so you can follow along, in your car or when you're walking around, and it also tells you. This is something that I don't know how much how much I should go into sort of technical details, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going to say how I think this works, and feel free to correct me, because you know way more about this than I do. But people often forget that when it says on the charger that it can deliver 120 kilowatts of power, it's the sort of the theoretical sort of top levels of the charge that the charger can actually deliver. But the first thing that happens is the charger asks the car, how much do you need, or how much can you take? And the charger also tells the car, this is how much I can deliver currently. So there's a bit of a negotiation, but at the end of the day, the car is in charge of how much power it wants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is quite often, virtually all new EV owners that I talk to are always kind of confused about this, because they read the specs when they buy the car, they read the specs when they approach the charger, and they expect the highest values that are available. And in reality, you never get that, or you seldom get that. And what I love about your chargers as well, and this is, I wish every charger was kind of communicating that in displaying it in a nice way, is the fact that as a user of that charger, you can see what's happening, so you can tell, okay, car is asked for that much power. Is that something that you guys do for every customer out there, or is it or is it, because I obviously I only have the experience with the charger in the UK. Is that always visible on the screen? Is every
no, at the moment, yes, it's a quite a new feature. Only some months that we were using it. Let's say already last year in our own charging field back at the factory, but it was testing that how does it work and is it reliable, and we are now going also to give accurate estimations for the car charging, because I think we have gathered now enough data on all the EVs that we can basically recognize the EVs based on the charging curve.
Okay.
And compare the charging data into the already done work.
Yeah.
And they take into account the facts like even the car doesn't tell the battery temperature. We can estimate it by the initial asking of power. Then you can estimate that now it's cold battery, so it means that it will take longer.
Yeah.
And the guys were able to achieve now, I think it's about maximum, I think 1 or 2 minutes errors what you get anymore in the charging time estimates. So that's a new feature as well, given into when you read the QR code.
Yeah. Okay. So
with the newer software, you can also see the minutes of what it takes to 60%, what it takes to 80%. So based on the car model, battery temperature, outside temperature.
Okay.
So there's a basically mathematical model that takes into account all the factors and tries to make us the best guess. And the guess is getting quite good at the moment. So
it's not the car telling you how long do you have to wait. It's you.
No. The cars, unfortunately, they don't know. I think my Tesla always tells 20 minutes, whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's trying to be optimistic.
I don't think they take all the parameters into account when they are doing this. I think they should, but they don't.
Yeah.
And it varies a lot with car models. Some are better, some are worse. But I think we wanted to just give a better service that you can actually see that how long it takes.
Yeah, I think this is something that people often forget about, is the is how complicated it is to estimate these things. You can think about the. I often tell people to think about the when you're installing a piece of software on your computer or whatever, you get a progress bar quite often, and you get an estimated time and how much that time jumps around.
Yeah.
It's all big. That technology, quote unquote, of estimation, how long things will take in the future. It's very hard.
It's funny also. Many of the EVs, the charging curve is not exact. So there's a lot of talks in at least the Finnish Facebook EV Drivers Association. There's new drivers are complaining that they didn't get 200 kilowatt for Tesla Model 3. I've never gotten that figure. I think my record is 186 one time. Shown on a charger, not in a car, because I think the cars also eat part of the power to battery warming and something like that.
Yeah.
The car might tell you different kilowatts than the charger.
Yeah, there's losses in the cable as well, of course.
Yeah, not that much. But it's too short for high losses, but I think there are losses somewhere in the car in the charging process as well, and different cars there tell it based on different ways. So
yeah, like with everything in life, you can measure things differently and get different outcome.
Yeah, it depends on where you measure, what you measure.
Yeah. And batteries also have.
And I would claim actually that the both displays on the car and charger are correct.
Okay.
The car is telling you how much goes to the battery, and the charger is telling how much goes to the car.
Yes.
Then if something disappears in between, then it's somewhere.
Yeah.
And some cars use more energy for battery heating and things like that. So of course
Yeah, you've got cables, you've got connectors, you've got the battery internal resistance, all sorts of things.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. It gets quite complex if you think about it, but
And also this kilowatt rating is as an electrical engineer, it's people are mixing things. It's kilowatt hours.
Yes.
And the real thing what the car asks from the charger is voltage and current.
Yes, yeah.
And those are the real limitations, and then you multiply to get power.
Yeah.
And power is kind of funny because it's not an actual thing you measure.
Okay.
It's a calculated value which is based on the current and voltage. And if the car asks less current and you have a low voltage on the battery, the power will be less.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as in the manual of the car. So that also gives a lot of confusion, especially with the older EVs. I think older Teslas have very low voltage.
Okay.
So if you have a current limit in the charging cable or somewhere, it will get less kilowatts because just based on the mathematics or physics that you multiply voltage with the current.
Yeah.
And the real limit is current because that's the connection and that's the charging cable limit, and that's what actually creates heat. So you don't want to melt the connectors as well. So you start dropping the current if things get too hot.
Yeah.
And
It is quite complex, and don't get me started on people mixing units, kilowatts and kilowatt hours. But it is hard. I'm an electrical engineer myself, and it's hard for me sometimes to recognize which one's which. Especially when you're in the middle of conversation and somebody's using wrong units, you don't want them to think that you're the sort of the geek who will point that out. You just kind of want the conversation to carry on, and then you get confused yourself because you ignore that. So this is where quite a lot of new cars actually come up with an 800 volt platforms that allows them to charge much quicker, even though and keep the current levels the same. What is the sort of the current the limitation when it comes to voltage? Like how many volts can a car charger output at the moment?
You mean cars or the chargers or how?
The charger itself. So if somebody came out tomorrow with 1,000 volts, battery pack, would the current chargers be able to cope with that, or is
not probably everything? And ours not yet, but in the middle of next year, yes.
Okay.
But, I think it's somehow that in Europe, I think the aim is to go to 920 volts in the future. That's at least what you hear from the car manufacturers.
Okay.
That could be. I don't know if it will be a limit. I don't see it going much higher because I'm looking at being a power engineer for the 20 years. I know that once you go to over or near the 1,000 volts, the components get more expensive, and it gets kind of like a limited amount of components also for the electric car components.
Yeah.
And the charger components, and it gets kind of to the higher voltage. You have those components, but they are more expensive. So I don't think the car manufacturers will actually choose that path.
Okay.
Unless they have to, and maybe when the volumes pick up, those components also get more popular and they get more common. But today, I think it's kind of upper limit is 1,200 volt with standard components, but then you don't want to get too close because
for safety, obviously.
Better to be around below 1,000 to make it safe.
Yeah.
Not to damage the components. So you should go actually to 1,700 volt components, and those are more rare. They are used in the, let's say, motor control industry and things like that, but they are more expensive. It's not so wide selection, I think, there.
So what do you say? Because I quite often hear from people telling me that they're going to buy an EV when it charges in 5 minutes. What do you say to these sort of people? Like, because obviously you and I kind of know that you would have to deliver quite a lot of power to a car in 5 minutes on a pretty flat curve for it to actually be achievable. Which I don't see that happening anytime soon. The cables would have to be very thick. But what would you say to these people?
Yeah, and I think also the current CCS connector cannot handle that. It's however thick you would have the cable, the connectors cannot handle it. So
true.
I think they would need to have a new connector, and that's also difficult when there is so many EVs already with the standard. So you would need to introduce a new one, and that's a hard and you need to standardize with every car manufacturer again and again and again. So I think it's the CCS connector which is now the limiting factor actually for the power.
Okay, I mean,
and the only way to outcome that is to have a higher battery voltages in the car, and then you have certain limitations. So I think there is a certain reasonable limit where it stays. I think it's still 200, 250 kilowatt is something that is maybe usable. Then looking at the grids and the places where you install chargers, so there's also coming some limitations. So my opinion actually that it will stay with 150, 200, maybe a little bit higher.
Okay.
But it will not be able to charge every car in 5 minutes. That will not happen immediately, because that's basically when you look at all the factors in place, that it gets just too expensive for the whole sum.
Yeah.
And actually, I see a lot of these who actually install the chargers. They actually like the people to use 15 minutes there, because then you buy a coffee or you buy a snack or you do something, because you see more and more these places actually installing the chargers.
Yeah, you get actual, whatever they call it these days, charging hubs, or whatever you would call it, places where you kind of just stop for half an hour. And the funny thing is, whenever I drive around the UK at least and stop at a service station and I plug in the car and I go away for 45 minutes, say, I often come back to the car and I see the same cars around still. So people stay, even in their petrol or diesel vehicles, they stay in the other service stations for way over an hour anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know why.
It's 15 minutes, 20 minutes is already enough. That's the normal bio break. Even if you stop for a toilet, seldomly are less than 15 minutes in there in the total.
Yeah. Unless you're really fast, which not everybody is.
Yeah.
Okay. And the another question that I have to ask, because you said about CCS, do you think the CCS standards is going to improve? Because I think a lot of problems that are coming or happening to the EVs is the sort of CCS incompatibilities, especially with the older EVs or older chargers. You turn up to a charger and it's having issues communicating with the car, or the charging stops within 5 minutes. I'm not obviously talking about Kempower chargers, I'm talking in general.
Yeah.
But CCS as a protocol is very complex and has multiple layers. Do you see that improving anytime soon, or?
That way in a software background, I would have voted for the CHAdeMO way. It's limited power, but that was I don't know, was it the Japanese thinking that they don't have enough power, that it never developed to higher powers?
Yeah.
But it's based on CAN protocol. I don't know how familiar with the communication protocols, but everything inside the vehicle works on CAN. So it would be a natural choice to also make the charger work with that.
Yes.
But the CCS went the other way, so it's now the predominant standard. So I think very well, it would be nice to have it on CAN-based protocol in the future, but that's also hard when you have the old EVs, new EVs, and then you have, again, two things not matching. So I would think it develops, and the cars are getting better. I definitely can say that. Now it takes less and less time, actually, to when new EVs are coming, there's no hassles in most of them. Some of them still have some different interpretation of some checking times in the things that you have to modify things, and that's, for the charger manufacturer, of course, creates a lot of work. Okay. Because we also make 100% on our charging control is self-made. So it makes, and that's also one reason that our backend system recognizes the cars, that we immediately see if a new car comes, that it groups these cars together and then shows, and then you have just to identify what it is and then start working it in a way what's wrong, and try to, normally we can solve it pretty fast, especially from the point of view that you have a self-developed charging controller. Then you have the full power to actually access it. And it's also important for us because we work outside of the private vehicle industry. We work with the buses and trucks and even mining machines and construction machines. So those are also new markets, and when I said private vehicles are getting better, it's a completely new market for these guys who are coming from new industries to EVs, and they are implementing the CCS standard, and then it's all the time new things, and we're actually working with some vehicle manufacturers from the start when they are coming, especially in the mining world or construction machine world, to help them also develop it.
That sounds fascinating.
Because we can also spot maybe mistakes in their side and make mistakes in our side, and then match the things together. So
okay,
it's a strength to also own that technology in your own hands, so you can respond fast to the issues in the field.
So are all the chargers that you have already currently in the field, like say the ones in the UK who are out there, do you update the software yourselves, or is it done via charging point operator?
Yeah, that's based on the contract, but most of the things we do ourselves.
Okay.
That it's just that there cannot be any car charging when the software updates are done. So of course you have to work with the operators as well. That it must be empty and yeah.
Okay, but all the software can be updated over the air, presumably.
Yeah, everything. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. So when the new car comes out, and you have to make sure that a charger, like there were a couple of cars like Jaguar I-Pace comes to mind. Famously didn't like some of the chargers in the UK, even though the car has been developed in the UK. Loads of people have been complaining that the chargers stopped working with the car. But that was quite a few years ago now. Like I think 2018 or 17 when I-Pace came out.
I can say that was a challenging one. It had some differences.
Okay.
But it's the new ones are okay, and I think there's a lot of software updates all done on the car side as well.
Yeah.
But it was a tricky one in the beginning.
Okay. And
there was other few models which also were tricky in the beginning, and I don't remember which brand it was, but it was asking for max voltage 0 volts. But some of the chargers didn't actually care about it, but our charger was checking that, and then it was trying to push more and more current at 0 volts to reach the kilowatts, and
that's not going to work very well.
Yeah, when the car has zero volts, then that's difficult.
Yeah, because you don't know how much you want to deliver. Because that's the other thing that people don't realize is that once the car is plugged into the rapid charger is basically connected almost straight to the battery, right? So you have to be very careful in terms of what you're going to deliver. Obviously, there's a bit of monitoring going on and measuring, so the car can turn it off immediately if there's anything wrong.
Basically, if there is this short circuit, so ground faults, that's the thing. But basically, on the battery side, then the car is responsible on that, and that's where the safety kit comes in.
Yeah,
and that's why the cars are sometimes limiting the powers and things like that. So.
Yeah. So when the car asks for 0 volts, you have to be suspicious about that.
Yeah. That could be a little bit something wrong.
Yeah. So you've mentioned sort of mining and sort of other new industry. So what is the biggest vehicle, battery powered vehicles that you guys have been working with, like the size wise?
I think it's somewhere in the mining world. I think the biggest machines are. We look at the weight. I think over 60 tons.
Oh wow.
So that's
a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
What are the battery sizes in those sort of machines?
Several hundred kilowatt hours.
Okay.
Depending really on the model and what the work it is actually doing, and the big ones have been actually these dumpers moving underground, and these haulers, you call them.
Yeah.
It's like a wheel loader, but it's a special one for the mining, which is a very narrow and long machine.
I think I know what you're talking about. I've never seen one in person, but because I think they're huge. Like if you see them in person, you must. Well, I've seen some pictures of persons standing to some of them, and
they're open mines. But then the underground ones are a little bit even weirder because you have to move in the very very narrow spaces and still have a heavy load. So.
And do they still charge via CCS, or do they have some sort of a?
CCS has standardized quite well its place. Okay. Some new industries come and they think they need their own kind of things, but it soon is corrected because it's kind of when you have developed a safe way to charge, it's easy to standardize.
Yeah.
And then it gives flexibility also when you buy these mining vehicles that if you have one standard, then they are free to choose in the future who's charger or who is provider. And
yeah, that's a good point.
I think the standardization is coming, and I think the CCS is the most widely used standard when it comes also outside of private vehicles.
Okay. And
I've seen it also used in Asia when you have sometimes GPTs and Zaremos, but in the machine world, CCS is quite often used all around.
Yeah, and these days, Teslas are sold at least in the UK with the CCS as well, and the new Model S is supposed to come out with the CCS as well. So
that's a rumor. I'm hoping. Mine is. I think they're giving a longer time for the new S all the time. I'm waiting for one as well. And I'm hoping it has a CCS plug. I'm thinking it will have, because you can see that the new Tesla chargers only have a CCS connector. So I would like to have it with the proper connector. I have a Model 3 because I didn't like the old style that you have to have these adapters.
Yeah, that's terrible.
You feel yourself like an Apple guy with a box of connectors. So that's
I think Apple has improved now with the new laptops. Are actually the new MacBook Pros are pretty good. They have all sorts of but I think it was called Dongle Town. When you owned an Apple equipment, you always had like loads of different dongles, as they call them, because they dangle from the it was terrible.
Because it seems to be sometimes it's annoying to even get the Type 2 cable out of the car, and then if you have a box of adapters, that's making it even.
Speaking of Tesla, like obviously they've been out with the chargers way before CCS even became a standard, I think.
And that's most likely the reason for the difference as well.
Yeah. But do you think CCS is going to move towards kind of like Tesla quote unquote experience? Because I think that's the other criticism that I get all the time from people who are new to EVs is the fact that they have to download apps. And obviously these days they can use contactless, but it's still pain to have to navigate, a new charger screen every time they approach a charger. There's so many of them. Whereas in Tesla experience, as you know, you, at least with superchargers, you just drive up to one, plug in, and that's it. Anything that happens inside the car. If you have to on Model 3, if you have to pay for it or pair it with the account or whatever. Do you think we're going to see that in the other vehicle world with our CPOs kind of requesting that? Well, when you get a call from...
And basically the problem today is the cars, that the cars are not allowing to be, not all the models are allowing themselves to be recognized.
Okay. Is that for privacy reasons or
I think it would be easier if they would, some of the cars are actually changing their ID on purpose not to be recognized. I think it's something to do with the tracking people's movement or something like that.
Yeah.
Because most of the German brands who are now masking their IDs, or changing their IDs between the charging, because we were actually having an idea that we just take the ID and use that, but that keeps changing with some of the new models.
Yeah.
Some cars you could still use it, and Tesla has the benefit that it's a closed network.
Yeah.
And they have a full access to their car data, and they can basically tie the car and your account, and when it's a closed system, you don't need to talk with the other manufacturers to agree on a standardized IDs. But when you mix different brands and different the car manufacturers should agree together something, and that's called now the plug and charge standard.
Okay.
But of course, there's some chargers we are also working on it, but not introduced because there's not enough cars to make it worthwhile yet. Because only few cars, and some of them don't even follow the plug and charge in like it should be. But that's basically bringing it closer to the Tesla experience.
Yeah.
But if you have plug and charge, you would need to still register to all the service providers. So I don't know, does it get, for new user, does it get easier because you use plug and charge, that's just your ID. You should still register somewhere with your credit card and basically
have somehow.
Now you just don't have the RFID token. Your car is the token, but you still have to register somewhere with all the suppliers. So in a way, there is some of the governments are saying that the credit card should be used like a gasoline payments.
Yeah, I think that's the standard in the UK, that the all new chargers are required to use contactless, so you can just approach it and and be able to start charging without having any apps or
that's I think EU. That's one good thing out of the Brexit, that you can do that.
I think that's happened before Brexit.
EU, it's not that straightforward with these new rules that you have the PIN code or the verify your strong recognition of who is the payment. That just the contactless is not enough.
Okay.
That you have to have this either PIN code, or you have to go somewhere on the web to make identification every 5th time or every 10th time or something like that. And it's making. We have also delivered the contactless payments to UK and I think now in Switzerland. But in EU, it's a little bit unclear because parking fees you can pay, and parking fees in many cases could be higher payments than charging.
Yes.
But today, charging is not listed as this small, insignificant payments list where you could only have contactless payments without this strong recognition. Whatever kind of lottery you get with this contactless pay. At least in Finnish grocery store, every 5th time or every 10th time you have to punch in the PIN code just to verify you are you.
Oh, wow.
But you can still have a contactless payment most of the time. But sometimes they ask that that's basically something that the charger should also have PIN pad or some kind of way to do that. And it's getting. But then looking at the Tesla experience and the credit card payment, those are two completely opposite sides of the things. So people are asking for plug and charge, and in the next phrase they say they want to have credit card payment. And you cannot have plug and charge in the credit card payment terminal. That's kind of
quite a lot of new cars that are sold these days. They come with some sort of a subscription model, and it's prepaid usually for a year or two. And I cynically
with plug and charge would work perfectly.
I cynically suspect that they give you a year or 2 years for free because they're still trying to figure this out. And they, nothing works yet, but they just say, okay, well, you have 2 years for free whilst we're figuring this out. Because I know loads of people who have the new Kias or new Hyundais, and they all come with 2 years for free, charging, at least on Ionity and sort of other chargers that can actually work with the plug and charge, and can recognize the car flawlessly, basically, when you plug in. But it's interesting that it sounds like most of the problems that are associated with manufacturing and kind of delivering charging points are nothing to do with the electrics of it, but everything else, the standards like the CCS and the customer preferences when it comes to the charging and operators obviously having some other requirements. But is there anything?
I'm paying my charging almost 100% with RFID tags because I find that the fastest and the easiest. Of course, with the supercharger, that's convenient.
Yeah.
But I also understand the difficulty of introducing that to everywhere because you need the recognition and the car is just a token. And in Tesla, you are automatically registered because it's the car manufacturer's system. And but not all the brands can have their own network. It doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, we would have like 20 different brands again side by side, and that's you need these general standardized things and how to make it easier. Maybe it is the easiest way. You've driven an EV long time. I've driven now only 3 years, but we know how to do that, and that's not a problem anymore. But the new users and the early adopters, the normal people are coming into the market.
Yes, and
so
they're confused.
That's why I see maybe the credit card payment and the contactless payment becoming more popular because the early adopters are willing to accept these RFID tokens and whatever you have. And I thought it was easy. Then we got the second EV, and my wife has used the Tesla as well many times, and she's normally charging in the same places as superchargers and others as well, but only in few. But now she's driving an ID4, and I started explaining what possibilities in our country would be with what app, what token you should pay in where, and what is a roaming fee, and what is a difference in. And you might have a brand on a charger, but it might be different on your RFID tag because you can get a discount with certain provider in somewhere. And it was after half an hour, I just said, now I realize how difficult it is to be coming from that you tried to explain the things, how it works, because you thought it was easy. Because you've been doing it for years and being inside the industry, and you know who works with who, and you know where you get the best price on which fees and whatever, but it's very hard to explain. Even technically competent person who hasn't been in there, and it took a half an hour, and we were nowhere after that yet.
Yeah, and also being an engineer helps you think about things, and you're trying to figure out problems and solve them. But whenever I try to talk to anyone who's not sort of engineering mind and just wants to get on with it, they don't have patience to deal.
I think it will be also with the customer experience that people are starting to avoid the things which are too difficult.
Yes.
And when you have enough charging point, it kind of naturally goes into place. But we have few painful years to come that there is not enough charging, so everything gets used, and then the market doesn't drive it to certain direction by itself.
Yeah.
So I think there's some like the steps with the UK government saying that there has to be a credit card payment terminal. Maybe is something that will happen in other countries as well.
Okay.
Because
I think that's the easiest solution, because then what happens in the UK is that you pay more if you use the contactless payment terminal, but at least you don't have to worry about having an app or whatever. They always encourage you to download an app. There's always a QR code for it, but you don't have to do it.
But when you go into the Tesla experience, you will go back into the app world or website or somewhere you have to register for that service provider, and then you can get your car.
Yeah,
but that's the other route. Basically, you make the action easy, but then you again has to register everywhere. And so, which one is actually easier? Maybe for normal person who has never been in the EV industry, the credit card still is easier than going to plug and charge and trying to figure out where you register your data so that your car can be used as a payment method. So it's I would like to have plug and charge, and I like the RFID things, but it is complicated at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not complicated to do when you know what to do. I have my RFID tags in the car. I never carry them. It's there, so it's faster to take out than credit card because it's there. And or talking about an app that you have to go and I broke one phone already, but dropping into asphalt while trying to connect the cable at the same time. So.
We've all had that experience, and I think all the seasoned EV drivers can sympathize with having like a thick stack of cards or tags in their car. I've got that in the glove box. It's that thick, and some of those networks are no longer no longer exist or have been out of business for a couple of years now. I still have it in a car because just somehow I just like to keep it. Like there were networks called Plug-in Midlands, for instance. Midlands is like a region in the UK, and they've been out of business for God knows how many years now. But I still have a card for it because it was free, and you had to register it when you bought an EV and you wanted to drive somewhere that way. You looked it up and you had to get a card from them, so I did. Going back to the chargers themselves, like what does the future hold for what do you see yourself, or what is coming out of your own stables, or in terms of the new features and new improvements, other than obviously the sort of the software updates, but do you see anything happening? Anything we should be excited about?
We are working a lot with the usability and making the experience easier as far as we can go. Of course, you have limited ways to affect. You can only offer to the operators the possibilities to use kind of new things, and like the contactless payment terminals, we have it in as a standard models. And if the CPOs want to use them, then it's available. And you have different ways of handling that. But we are working a lot with getting the data for the users, like the new introductions now that you recognize the car model and give an accurate estimate for the charging times and make it easier for the users, even smoother. And of course, on the bigger things, I cannot mention yet everything what's being done, but we are also following. It's a lot things in the chargers are waiting also the cars to be able to go that way.
Okay, so
it's looking at like a plug and charge. You have to have cars which you can use, and looking at very interesting what happens with this vehicle to grid things that you could power your home or do that. In Finland, we would love that because a lot of the people have still summer cabins which might have only small power solar electricity for the lights. And if you could bring the electricity with your car to your cabin, that would be very nice.
Yeah, and obviously you have
to heat the house. Users do that now.
Yeah.
And people using washing machine with the Honda. that you can plug in your washing machine. Especially we had really expensive electricity a couple of days. I saw in the EV Facebook that somebody got free electricity from a grocery store, went home and washed dishes with that because the electricity price was high. So that's interesting way that I would not have time for that. But yeah, if you want to save some couple of euros for that, so.
Yeah, I mean, some people trying to game the system as much as they can.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I think that's one of the reasons why Tesla didn't bring in the vehicle to grid, because the supercharger network is free for the Model S and Model X owners, or at least the ones in the past, and they didn't want people to game the system. They didn't want them to charge for free and then power their house for free, because I'm sure loads of people would do that, and that would have ruined the whole scheme. So do you think vehicle to grid using the rapid chargers is
I think if you have a proper products that you would have DC chargers that are small power for the homes.
Okay.
In there, it might make sense, or at workplace, where you stay longer and you could use the battery. But I would hate the system that steals my battery power when I'm driving away. That I charge for 20 minutes, and if I'm 10 minutes too long, then the battery is again half. When they took the power out. So maybe not there. But I'm looking at the big truck depots or bus depots that if the batteries are full, they could maybe sell it as a service to grid operator as securing the frequency or something like this. There it could be used for the big power rapid chargers as well. But I don't see it coming in the public chargers that the power company is stealing part of your battery capacity when
No, I think there's been some trials in the UK where you could get a CHAdeMO vehicle to grid charger for your house, but the electric company would operate it, so you didn't get any control over it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't kind of work very well. You would get a discount from them, but they would still make money on it, and you weren't in control of it, and or is not as much as you could. And also because it was CHAdeMO, it's no longer as popular as a CCS. And does the CCS actually support vehicle to grid, or is that an upcoming feature?
Not yet officially. So I think the development not going away, but that's also one part of the things that it's not yet happening.
Yeah, but you don't see like the regular, public rapid chargers to have that implemented, because obviously
I have a hard time to find reason for that.
Yeah. But I'm presumably you are.
I would think that if you would have I think it's a reasonable, like the case you had in UK with the CHAdeMO, that you have low power home DC chargers, but they should be. I think the price should be a little bit lower than it is today. To make it, and maybe if the scheme would have like a power company investing in the charger, giving it you for free, and then paying part of the electricity, and then gaining the power over the charger and the battery. And it's also the story when you have an EV that if you cycle it all the time back and up, it might get also old faster. So it's
but for the sort of the power that you take out to power a house, that's not too much for an EV to
No.
When you're accelerating, you're using 50, 60 kilowatts sometimes to actually accelerate from 0 to 20 miles an hour or whatever. It takes a lot of power for a couple of seconds, obviously, but still. Whereas the house is nothing.
But I see the V2G more like a home market, and maybe if you would have a factory parking lot.
Yeah. Okay.
That the company would give you free charging if your battery could be used to basically take the peak power. During the day and things like this, that it kind of. Otherwise, in the public ones, I have a hard time understanding where's the business case.
That's true.
Kind of that. What's the reason? But basically, in this longer term, parking, then there should be a market for that. And I'm interested in looking at what happens with that. Is there more vehicles, and how is the CCS evolving? That will there be standardized V2G? And of course, we are looking at with the big interest as well that how does it turn out. But I see it more or less with the smaller power DC maybe as a reasonable, because AC vehicle to grid, that's something that is, because then the investment is in the car side. and that would increase the cost of the car. And I have a little bit doubts that the electric vehicle manufacturers want to increase the cost of the car.
No, that's the...
I'm seeing also the AC charging, that if you have reasonable priced DC chargers at home, that the AC chargers would actually be completely or partly away, because it's an increased cost in the EV. And I think the car manufacturers want to drop every cost they can from the car side,
of course,
and push it to the outside. So, but of course it's spare power. So maybe the AC chargers in the car or the onboard chargers, the power will drop actually in the future.
Yeah, I've had an interview with somebody who manufactures house or like home chargers about a year ago, and she made a very good point that one of the things that's missing for the home charging is the sort of the ability to communicate. You know, what you take for granted when you use CCS or CHAdeMO. The people who manufacture house or AC chargers, they don't get that communication with the car, so they kind of have to guess. What you're doing now with the charging curves and kind of guessing what the car is, they've been doing it for quite a while, basing on how the car negotiates the initial pilot sort of negotiation at the beginning to kind of guess what the car is. And quite often they would love to be able to communicate to the car just via even CAN bus, but that's not in the current standards. So I think, but that's a completely different subject, obviously. I think that industry or that side of things in terms of charging will have to improve at some point. So if you know anybody in a car OEM business, talk to them and tell them that the house charging needs to be improved as well, because it's not only most people charge their cars at home. Yeah. And they seldom use the rapid chargers. And I think the house charging experience has to improve.
Or like us in here, we charge with rapid chargers at work, because that's part of the testing as well. So
that's it. Yeah, they call it dog feeding, right? Dog feeding. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, we have a 600 kilowatt charger in the back with a lot of output. So it's
And does I'm guessing that gets a lot of use from the how many people actually drive EVs at your office?
I think currently we're getting new employees, so not all of them. I think we have like more than 30% of the employees. We have 130 people, so that's. I think it used to be almost 50%, but now not. It seems to be also delivery time of EVs, because a lot of the people are convinced when they work here that they would actually choose the EV. Yeah. We have a lot of people waiting for EVs now because of the delivery times are getting longer.
Yes. I was just about to ask you, like, does actually working for your company or any sort of company in that sort of market or business, does it actually convince more people to buy an EV as their new car?
Yeah, and we also don't allow any other EV as a company, other kind of car as a company car.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank Tommy for his time. He's an incredibly busy individual, as you might have guessed. And I've only had limited time with him, but I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. As always, check out the links in the description and see you on the next one.